Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Advocacy. We definitely have a great guest with us tonight. We have Amy Kelly, and we also have my co host, Madeline. So, with
Mhm.
that being said, we're just going to jump right in because, as you all know, most of the time we go beyond an hour and we want to stick to this hour. Amy, can you jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell us about Devereux, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, my name is Amy Kelly, and I am a proud mom to three young adults: a 25-year-old son, a 24-year-old daughter, and a 22-year-old son who's getting ready to graduate from Penn State. My daughter, Annie, in the middle, is the one that brings me to the special needs world. She was diagnosed with autism just before she turned two, and then subsequently after that was diagnosed with intellectual disability, general anxiety disorder, verbal apraxia, meaning the part of your brain that kind of controls how your mouth moves to get words out is disconnected. So she really was non-speaking for her first 10 years of life, and then started to try and attempt speech, which was fantastic, but learned other ways to communicate using an iPad and learning how to write and read, mostly through rote memory at the beginning. And then an ABA was a big help in teaching her to learn. It's not for everybody, but it certainly was like a key therapy for her to be able to learn how to function. And when she turned 5 was when I had to look for a school that was different than where her brothers were going. She would not be able to be mainstreamed into her, the same elementary school that her brothers were at. So I ended up just sort of looking, through the yellow pages. They used to have those. And found Devereux, and it was really in my own backyard. I had no idea that it was so close to me. Devereux is a large mental and behavioral health organization, and we're in 12 states. And we started in Pennsylvania. The program that I was looking at for Annie was an approved private school, which meant it was a very small student program with a high staff ratio to be able to give those students a lot of individualized teaching and attention and help with behaviors and that kind of thing. And fortunately, she qualified for them. And Annie went through school, all the way until she basically, it was just before she turned 22 that she ended up, I'm going to say graduate, but we know it's really falling off the cliff is what, we call it around here, is because, when kids are in school, it's a federal entitlement, and they are entitled to all of these services and things. And once they turn over, 21, 22, or if they actually do graduate at 18, they no longer are entitled to all of those things that our government so graciously provides them. So that's where, the hard stuff starts. And Paula, I know you mentioned earlier when we were chit-chatting that you're getting ready to do this with your daughter, and it's quite overwhelming and quite a lot to be thinking about. What are we going to be doing now with her time, and to keep her busy and continuing to learn, right? And to be happy and a functional contributing member of our community. So Annie has been at Devereux. She remains there in a program called Bridges, which is in our adult service program. It's a day program that's designed to bridge sort of those gap years from the time the child is out of school, but not ready to move out of their childhood home. And so it's designed for ages 21 to 30. And it teaches them everything from socialization in the community to volunteering to some job employment type things where they can try different skills. They, will go bowling or to the movies or to the zoo, but then they also learn how to make a bed, how to do laundry, all the stuff that adults need to know, right? And they do it in a really fun way. I think when they're with the group, they've got really great staff at the program who are really enthusiastic, and they just the woman who leads this is just dynamite. I'm so impressed with her. So that's going really well. And then the next step after that will be eventually to have Annie move into her own home, which, probably me as mom is going to have the harder time of letting her move out than she will. But, a lot of moms have trouble letting their kids move out anyway. Yeah, even
Yeah,
for neurotypical kids. So,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
This is awesome, and I will say, let me tell everyone how I came across Devereux. My mom's friend saw that they were having, I guess it was a webinar on a Saturday, and it was like from 10 or 11 to like 3 or something. And I turned it on, and I was fascinated. I was fascinated by how they had it organized. I was fascinated by, most importantly, the parent panel.
Mm,
Um, the parent panel was so awesome, and even though Annie is the national director, she was on the panel as a parent. They had parents on there, and they had all ages. They had siblings on there, and I just heard nothing but great information. I just the ravings of Devereaux. And then my husband called me, and I mentioned Devereaux, and he's from Philly, so he was like, "Babe, yes, I know about Devereaux. They're great. They're awesome, and they're this and that." But I will say, you guys, you got me to thinking. I mean, it drew me in because, um, of course, I have a son. My son Jeremy is older, and we've always talked about him raising Morgan. If something happened to me and he was at a certain age, it's like, okay, so you're gonna raise Morgan, and he's always said, "Oh yeah, mom, I'm gonna raise Morgan," but it raised the question of, us putting out special needs individuals, just assuming that the sibling wants to raise them, or just understanding that they're going to raise them. It made me start thinking about, and we did this at work, succession planning for Morgan.
yeah.
Just not assuming that Jeremy wants to raise her. Yeah, we talked about it when he was 18. Yeah, we talked about it when he was 20, but he's 26 now.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I felt like that would be a safe place. Devereaux, from all that I heard, I just felt like it would be a safe place for Morgan, because I've always heard about group homes, and group homes was an automatic no. I would not do that to my daughter. And to hear um just everyone talk about, how their siblings went there when their parents, passed away or got older and couldn't take care of them, and they associated them this as home. So when they came home for the holidays, their special needs sisters or brothers like, "No, we ready to go back." And I was like, wow.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so it just got me to
Um,
thinking. And another thing that I like that, and I don't want to take over this, because I will,
no,
because I
you
just
tell me because I've got feedback for you after. Keep going.
okay. And Madeline, you jump. I'm a mute mine in a minute, because I'm gonna let you get in there. But one thing that I do like too is that age bracket, because for me, whenever my daughter Morgan is on the smaller end of a
Mhm.
21-year-old. So when everyone, basically, it's like once you turn 21, it's almost like you're thrown into the adult pot
Yeah.
without understanding that 21-year-olds should not be with 50-year-olds,
Right.
and
Right.
50-year-olds should not be with 21. And not only that, all of their physical capabilities are different. So for me, when people, and I'm sure Amy and I'm sure Madeline, you all can attest to this. I'm sure when people, come up with, "Oh, we got this camp, we're going to take everybody to do
Mhm.
this." And I'm like, well, my daughter doesn't like doing that, or she's not capable of doing that.
Right.
So some of these things, when I heard the parents and the siblings talk about Devereaux, it's like I just felt like Cheers, it was a place to call your own. Like
Aw.
everybody felt like, that's what I felt. And I
Yeah.
was just so impressed with Devereaux, and just everybody I mentioned Devereaux too. Everybody had a positive spin or a positive story to tell. So I was like, I have got to get them on the show, yeah, to help everybody to understand that when you mention group homes, this doesn't seem like it's a group home to me. It seemed like it's a family. It seemed like it's home for them, not a
Yeah.
group home, but it just seems like it's home. So I'm gonna get a little teary because during that process,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
started getting a little teary eyed, not just knowing that is this the Lord sending this to me, just in preparation for my daughter if something happens to me or my husband, just having a realistic plan for her that is not like where she's thrown somewhere and the door is closed and she doesn't ever get to see the outside
Oh,
again.
oh gosh, no. Yeah. Thank you so much for all those compliments. I feel the exact same way about Devereux because they were life changing to me and my family. And that's when I was, this was back in 2009. I started working, no, 2011. So I've been there 15 years. But I created a job for myself because there wasn't one, but I noticed they needed a liaison of a parent to sort of the corporate world. And I used my MBA that I got before I had kids and put together a business plan and created a position for sort of a family community liaison kind of position where I would be out in the community kind of, at a Devereux table talking about our services, but from the parent perspective. And as you see here, we're parents who instantly get each other because we may not have kids with the same diagnoses, but we know what it's like to live a life that's a little different than everybody else's, right? And that is such a important commonality that we share, and that it's important we find our tribe in that way. And you were at the Family Resilience Conference, which I will give a plug. It's already scheduled for next year. It's February 6th, 2027. And I'm fortunate enough to MC it. And then you're right, I was on the family panel. And along with, we have so many trustees, board of trustee members so if you don't understand sort of that structure, but they're basically our CEO's bosses, right? He has multiple bosses. And we have at least 5 who are family members. And that's really important because we have something at Devereux called the Devereux Family Standard. And what that means is, we work so that, and every employee should believe that if this facility or this program or this unit is not somewhere you would put your own family member, then we're not doing our job. So all programs have to have the quality that we would all feel comfortable to have our own family member live there or go to that school or receive those therapy services, or whatever the service line is. And I feel lucky because I get to live the Devereux Family Standard every day. I have my daughter at the program, and I get to help our families, or potential families, right, learn about Devereux, learn how to navigate systems of care, because that's very confusing, as I'm sure you know from the get-go, understanding Medicaid and the education system, and then just the medical system and all of the specialists involved with that. And then if you have a child with an intellectual disability, that's a different system in and of itself. Autism requires sort of that behavioral health system of care. So there's all these siloed systems that don't really talk to each other. And one of the really important jobs and sort of, I'll say, unexpected jobs of a parent when you get a new diagnosis is sort of figuring out how to be the case manager and pull that all together, right? And so you heard us talking about, because the panel there has, all of them have loved ones that live at Devereux or had lived. One of them had passed away by then, but she's still a board member and so passionate about Devereux. And I feel the same way. I felt the same as you, that, I hope that Danny and Ryan will want to be part of Annie's life. But my job, to me as their mom, is to really set it up so that they don't have to do anything that they're not prepared for, and that they can absolutely have their own family life and raise their family as they normally would, right, without their sister in the picture, if that was what they chose. Because I didn't want them to have to be just feeling like this was their whole future, because this was my future, right? Annie's my daughter, not, it's not their daughter, it's their sister, and they know life no differently than having a sister with autism. They love her and accept her. They're her greatest advocates. And in fact, Annie is on our sibling engagement committee, where we're looking to get other siblings involved and to help them prepare for the future, right, when the parents aren't there, because there's a lot to learn, and we had to learn it, rapid fire. But if we can start to come up with ways that we can start teaching the siblings in a healthy and I'll say less haphazard way that we had to learn as parents, because you feel this sense of urgency as a parent to start therapy right away and figure out how all these things fit together. But if we can get that set up for them, and I think that's what's really ideal. So I'm so happy that you were able to come to that conference and that it spoke to you in that way. And it was probably divine intervention that you were there, for sure.
Yeah, I have so many questions to ask, but like you said, like Paula was saying, when you think of a group home, for people like this, it's because I used to work with kids with multiple disabilities, and there's been a lot of horror stories.
Sure.
But anyway, now when you said your daughter was 2 years old, she got into the program when she was 5, you said?
Yeah. So an approved private school is basically, instead of like where kindergarten starts. So it was not a preschool, right? So for those 3 years before she went into the school, I had therapy in my home 6 days out of 7 days a week with people in and out.
She lived there when she turned 5.
Lives with me still. She has not.
Okay, so she doesn't have to stay there.
Still lives. She's in the program that's preparing her to move out. That Bridges program I mentioned at the beginning is a program that's designed to prepare her to move into a home. And so group home has different meanings or connotations, right? And I know that it has some negative ones. There is so for us, when I say group home, I'm thinking of our homes that are on a campus. We have beautiful campuses. There's homes that are near proximity. There's a swimming pool and a gym, and then there's a medical center, but it's all really close together in this particular campus. And they are beautiful homes. They have roommates, they have staff, and they are very appropriate for the people that need that level of attention. My goal for Annie, so like medically intensive individuals who must have a nurse like at all times on campus or something, that would be a very appropriate place. Individuals who have severe self-injurious behaviors where they're hurting themselves, right, and they need some intervention, that might be an appropriate place for them. But my hope is to have Annie live in a home with staff, but in a neighborhood that she's used to, right? And maybe she'll have 1 or 2 roommates. We also have apartments that are like that, right? So they're integrated within the community and less, I'll say, isolated into that group home setting, meaning it's on its own campus. The campus is in a beautiful area outside in the upper main line of Philadelphia's suburbs. And it's gorgeous. If you drove on there, and you can see how happy our individuals are just by driving around. You see them out and they know each other. They say hi to everybody. I mean, it's really lovely. But that level of intensity may not be needed for everybody.
Right. So your 12 state, you said it's in 12 states. Each location in the 12 states, are they the same?
Yeah, no. So Devereux is in 12 states. That's right. And Pennsylvania is sort of a microcosm of what all of our services are across the 12 states that we're in. I'll say, like, our California program, we have a program in Santa Barbara, California, gorgeous. Right, I know. But that's an adult program. They don't have
Okay.
children's programs
Okay.
there. So they have adult programs just at that location. There's other places where we don't have adult programs, but we have kids only. Like in our Arizona program, we have programs for sexual trafficking victims. We do some incredible work there that is just, I mean, it's really just heartbreaking when you see these kids come in who have been trafficked, and to see the work that our therapists and doctors and nurses do is pretty remarkable. But we also have programs for, kids with emotional and behavior disorders like suicidality or homicidality. We have programs for those kids, more like my daughter Annie, with autism and intellectual disabilities, right? Like we have so many different types of programs. We have schools, and we have schools for autism and ID. We have schools for that, more of the emotional behavior disorder, where intellectually they're intact. They need some help with emotional regulation, right? We have consulting business that really we can help wherever we need to go for that. We offer community-based programs, so like outpatient therapy, or just a place where you go to a psychiatrist for med management or to help with your medications, but you don't need active therapy perhaps. We do family-based therapy and wraparound services. We provide ABA services. So there's a wide variety of programs, and we really serve almost birth through end of life. It's pretty remarkable. We started in 1912, so we've had quite a long time to perfect this. And a really incredible woman, Helena Devereux, started the program. She was a teacher, a public school teacher in South Philadelphia. It was before the time that women could even vote. And she had decided that she wasn't really thrilled with seeing how kids with special needs were treated. People kept saying, I can't teach them. Those kids can't be taught. And so she rented a home in Devon, Pennsylvania, which is right in the main line area outside of Philly, and opened up a residential school for families to be able to send those kids that couldn't be taught, right? And she started to make some progress, and families were excited about this. And then she got asked by someone out in California, would you come out here to start a program out here? And instead of paying her, they gave her this huge lot of land in Santa Barbara, right? Which, can you imagine? I know. But here's this woman who didn't even have voting rights. She wasn't married, but she took a train all the way across the US to go start this program. And that sort of just began everything. So, she was quite something. And so we've been around for, what is that, 114 years, I guess.
Wow. Yeah. Talk about commitment. That's a commitment.
It is.
And I think, when you think about the care that we would like for our special needs individuals to get, I will say that having Morgan opened up my understanding. You didn't know what was out there. You didn't know what most people dealt with. And you didn't really, kind of focus on the needs. You thought it was a one size fits all thing. And I'm sounding ignorant, but I know
you're not. You sounded how I thought too. I thought the exact way. Yeah.
It's almost like a one size fits all. And this is why advocacy is in place, because I want to educate people, because I think if you're not dealing with something firsthand, and I'm not just talking about special needs, I'm talking about me even dealing with, I broke my foot and having to understand people getting me off of a plane. I had to sit there and wait for people to come. It was a full understanding of what handicapped individuals dealt with. So if you're not dealing with that, in most cases, you're not really abreast of what's out there or what the needs are. So I just applaud Devereux, because it just seems like your mission is expanding by the minute, because I know the sex trafficking, I'm not saying that hadn't been around for years, or maybe we didn't label it as that, but when you think about that, that's more on the horizon now. You're being told to watch out for this, watch out for that. So
Yeah.
it seems like your mission is constantly expanding, you know.
One of the things, I just traveled as well recently, and I was in an airport, and one of the things that I thought was so great was in the stall, the door, the back door of the stall was what to look for children who are sexually trafficked. And things like inappropriate clothing during the wrong season, or kids that won't make eye contact and they kind of look out of place, and then if they teach you how to sign, like help, how to do the signs for it, right, in sign language. I mean, it was really, you're absolutely right. It's finally getting the press that it deserves. Devereux has been helping these youth for a very long time. And, you know, my former boss, our chief medical officer, who's no longer at Devereux right now, but she was an expert in that field and just really brought it to light, I think, in so many ways, important ways, that it deserved to be spotlighted, as hard as it is to think about. But there is such a high population of kids that, you know, are trafficked, especially like in the Florida area, that Florida region, and California, like New Mexico, like any of the border kind of areas are especially dangerous, and then cities as well.
Now, Amy, I know, and I looked it up I think when they had the 12 locations, I looked to see like what was the closest to me. Again,
Yeah,
I'm thinking like planning for Morgan if something was to
sure.
happen. I don't know, but you know, I know that Philadelphia was the closest to us. Are there many people that come to that location that are not from that area, like that are totally from a different area, and parents have to travel to kind of see them?
Sometimes. So it depends on a few things. So it depends, one, on the funding source, and if it's a child or, you know, youth versus an adult. Often with children, especially if it's a psychiatric, like residential treatment facility kind of placement, states have to find a bed that's open that can handle the needs of that youth. And sometimes that means going out of state. And so sometimes we will get, you know, kids sent to us in that way. And that's got to be really hard for these parents for many reasons, right? In some ways it's relief for them, that because their kids have been so challenging that or so at risk, right, for suicide or whatever it is, that they have not felt like they have been able to keep them safe. So one, kind of giving into that, saying, all right, I have to send them somewhere else, is hard. Two, there's some guilt sometimes because finally the parent gets to have some rest, right, and respite, which is so important because you can't be a good parent without your rest. But I understand how you might feel that sense of guilt. I know every mom I've ever talked to and worked with has felt guilt because of the diagnosis of their kid, right? Like no matter what, hands down. And then when you look at our adult programs, often the funding comes through a state waiver. So that's funding through the state based on the needs of that individual and what the state has. You have to be, you know, getting services for them in your state while they're younger to get on the radar for waiver funding. But when they have waiver funding, usually then they want to send them to a location, like a residential location within the state, if able. There's a few states that will send them out, you know, out of state, and those are usually case by case basis. And then obviously if there's private pay, where if a family can afford to pay privately for, you know, to send their loved one, you know, for the remainder of their life to live somewhere, then they have the option of selecting wherever, you know, they would like to. That's much more rare, though. It's very rare that our families are that wealthy to be able to do that, because when you think about the long haul, right, it's quite expensive to be able to have all of the staffing needs met, the food needs, right, the therapeutic needs, all of that. So so we are in 12 states. We have, I can list them out, or you guys can put my website on, your link, and that way people can look. But, we have Texas and California, and then we're Florida, Georgia. Let's see if I get them all. Texas, California, Florida, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, but
Phoenix.
Yeah, that's in Arizona. That's that middle part. Yeah. Yeah. And then we have New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. I'm missing. Who am I missing? They'll be mad at me probably. Let me look at my.
Gotta bring one in Maryland.
Well, so we have some things on the horizon. So we're in 12 states now, but what I would say is, let's see, who did I miss? Florida, Georgia. Looks like I got them. Arizona, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey. That's who I forgot, my New Jerseys. New York, Pennsylvania, and Texas. We are looking at, we're really looking at, some new ventures or partnering or affiliating with existing organizations, which has worked out really nice. It's allowed us to expand from the Philadelphia area over to the Pittsburgh area, which is a huge, need in that part of Pennsylvania. It's a bit more rural and there's not as many services out there. We're also up in State College where Penn State is. So we've been, expanding out. So if you feel strongly that you need a certain state, you're welcome to send in a letter and give us some ideas. I'm sure that
I'm just saying, succession planning for sure.
Of course, you absolutely should be. I like how you're calling it succession planning. Sometimes people call it estate planning, which estate sounds so fancy, right? It's
right. Yeah.
I don't have an estate, but what it means is future planning for your loved one, right?
Exactly.
And whatever you have, whatever you can leave them, however you're going to assign that. And that's something that we want our families to do quite early, which makes it so hard. Everything with our families has to start so early, right? Transition planning to think about them turning 21 has to begin at 14 at least.
Yeah.
14. Nobody else is thinking about, when they're going to be over 21.
Infant toddlers, as soon as they come out and they're not meeting milestones, it's like, hey, infant toddlers, get in school early. So you're right. It's like we have to be very proactive when it comes to our special needs individuals. You don't once you get past one hurdle, here comes another one.
Oh yeah. It's never ending.
So when you say it's time, you want time to rest, you're right, because that's real. I mean, I was raised in Morgan by myself for maybe 14, 15 years, and I just got married. It's going on 5 years. But I felt like
I'm coming on 6 years married for my second marriage. So I appreciate it. Single motherhood, man.
Oh my gosh.
So hard.
I felt like I was walking around in a fog. I felt like I was just like a zombie, never sleeping.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, so I definitely understand the need to plan ahead. And that's one thing that when I attended the webinar, they just kept talking about planning ahead, making sure everything is in place. And again, you have those hard discussions with your loved ones. You don't want to, but more importantly for me is making sure that Morgan is well taken care of.
Absolutely.
Madeline,
what were you saying?
So what is your your process? Let's say I have a child 16 with ED, emotional disturbance, and I'm coming to you for help. I live in Maryland. What's the process? How does it work?
So we're not currently in Maryland, right? But one way that a child who lives in Maryland might end up at a Pennsylvania residential treatment facility or a New Jersey, let's say, is if Maryland is not able to meet their needs, but they would have had to be in crisis. And then, and unfortunately, it's like every system, you have to fail up, you know what I mean? So you have to be in crisis, in the emergency room, basically, where you could be in there for days without finding a residential place, right, that's appropriate for them. And then there has to be a recommendation faxed over from a psychiatrist or the doctor on duty saying this is, because it's a restricted level of care, it's considered a restricted level, right? Being put in a residential place, you need a doctor to be writing a prescription for that, basically. And it has to come from the doctor. A family cannot, unfortunately, come say, my kid is ready to go into crisis again. I know it. Even though our families know, like we all know, we're the experts on our kids, right? So it gets really tricky. As if you were in Pennsylvania and you wanted to get help with appropriate medications and maybe talk therapy or, some sort of dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, like that would be where you go into one of our community-based, services, and you can get them signed up for CBT or DBT or CBT. You would get them hooked up with a psychiatrist who could do some prescribing and would be keeping an eye on that med management. There are some places, though, if you're specific to Maryland, that I can talk offline with you about. Though.
Oh no, I was just asking in general. Just kind of giving.
No, I'm just saying. If you need,
right? How does the process?
Yeah. And most places for residential care do require that kind of a placement. Like it has to come from a doctor, and it has to be in a moment of crisis. And there are mobile crisis units who sometimes can serve the purpose. Sometimes they just get there too late, where when I say too late, usually it's when the crisis may have died down, when that family really needed it most, right? And so that youth may be more settled at that moment, but not settled enough where the parents feel comfortable that they're going to be okay sleeping overnight, right? And that kind of thing. So it gets really hard. I do think, Paula, like you mentioned about, and I can say this till I'm blue in the face. Do I do it all the time? No, but caring for the caregiver, so taking care of yourself is so important. For me, I have developed autoimmune disorders from so much stress for so long. And I think, being a single mom, raising 3 kids, and I went back to school during that and worked full time, all that stress, your body handles it some way, right? And so for me, I've had to prioritize sleep as my number one thing. That's why I was like 8 to 9. That's like my bedtime. This podcast. I'm happy to be here, but
it's the truth. It's the truth, and I think that we don't talk. I mean, I think now we're talking more about the caregivers getting what they need, and I think we should that on our shows. Making sure that you take care of yourself. And I would be the first to say, I don't know. It was only by God's grace that I made it as long as I have. I think he brought in my husband at the nick of
time. I'll say same. He saved me. Yeah.
It's
for sure.
Lot. It's a lot.
Sure.
And I think when we talk about, even asking for help, I think that's one of the things that's hard for us to do is, number one, ask for help, because I think that I know for me, Morgan is a handful. And so for me to ask anyone to step into that arena with her when I'm already tired, it can be a lot. And then you think that sometimes people, no one wants to deal with that. And then you think that no one can deal with it. And then you're like, well, everybody sees what I'm going through. If they're going to help, they're going to help. So it's just a combination of things. But ultimately, caregivers are sometimes the forgotten hero. And
for sure. I totally agree.
I can attest to that. I don't have kids, but my mom had suffered brain aneurysm.
Oh, yeah.
The 3 of us, me and my sister and brother, took care of her.
Wow.
And it was a year I was here by myself with her. And aides it didn't work out. So it was really stressful.
Yeah.
She went to the hospital. I would get up 2:00 in the morning, go up to the hospital, to see her because she was crying a lot.
Aww.
And she got sick in 2007. She passed in 22. It was rough.
Oh, she lived a long time. Yeah.
15 years. Wow.
Obviously, you guys were giving her good care, but wow.
Because we brought her home because we said we don't want her in the home. She was only there because she was in the hospital. So we would take turns because we wanted her so we could see her.
Yeah.
It was hard, but she was the healthiest. I mean, physically, she was healthy. It was just here. We were the one blowing up, gaining weight.
Right.
But that's probably how y'all dealt with it, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I get it. I mean,
and not getting to like exercise the way you might want to, right? Like I really want to, but it's really hard to fit that in with everything else, you know. And that's right, I'm stinking tired all the time. Like, yeah.
Like I said, I was a mom's girl. So
oh my God.
As soon as she cried, we wanted to her.
Whether it's kids, whether it's a loved one that you care dearly for and that you want the best for. So I'm telling you, it's a lot. I just experienced it firsthand with my daughter. Yeah.
No, but if we could all be so lucky to have people caring for us in that way, because gosh, you know.
Well, we're storing up our timber. That's what the Bible says. So I do believe that God put these special individuals into our lives because he knew we could take care of them. So can you imagine we have people out here that's killing neurotypical, you know, just because they're crying too long. So can you imagine what I know with my daughter, I don't know about anybody else, but me and my son say, my husband and her godmother and everybody say all the time, we can't let anybody just keep her because
I totally get that. Finding caregivers is hard enough and trusting them, right? Even when you know they're trained. And I mean, that's why I feel so fortunate to work at Devereux. I know what goes into our training. I know what goes into our hiring and our background checks. And thank goodness, but it's still scary. And you know what? There's a bad apple once in a while, even in the best of the places, right? So it's still our job to stay on top of it. Just like you were saying, you know, you want your son to know what to look for, if nothing else, right? Like we want him to know what good care looks like, right? For her, and same for Annie. And I do think asking for help is one of the first things I try and give the families I work with permission to do, because for me, it felt like a failure for some reason. Like when I had to ask for help, I was like, I'm the mom. I should be able to do all this, right? And no, sometimes there's Herculean tasks that we need help with, you know, and you know, it does truly take a village or villages, right, to be able to help in different situations, and asking for help for yourself too, right? Like if you need to go take a half-hour walk, to have a neighbor be able to come over and sit with, you know, Morgan or Annie or whomever, to be able to say, you know, they're safe. I got them. They might be on their iPad, but that's okay for me to get 30 minutes of fresh air or something, right?
And Denise, you're right. I think one of the things that one of our people are commenting, one of the things that was hard for me is Morgan did not take well to others. She has social anxiety. So whenever she doesn't know you, it was just too hard to introduce someone new into her life. But as she got older, I realized that I was further handicapping her by not doing that. If I felt like a person was would be a good fit for her, it just took her an opportunity to get to know them, because it was almost like, for me, Morgan only wanted me. I mean, 24 hours. Yes, I mean 24 hours a day. She would just walk around the house just wanting to hold my hand. And that kept me from getting the sleep or the help that I need, or letting someone else come in, because I had kind of further handicapped her by just making myself available to her all day long, instead of introducing her to something or someone else. So you're right.
And you limited yourself so much as well, right? And your own ability to do anything that was of interest to you, right?
But like you say, you feel guilty. You feel guilty And
Totally.
even listening to when I was into the parent panel, and I think it was the older
Mhm.
lady that said about the family. I think one of them had passed away and the father was older, and they were like, well, what are we gonna do? And
Yeah.
it was just so, I mean, it was just so heart-wrenching to hear everyone talk about what I think I want to talk about, but I was afraid to admit that. I mean,
Yeah.
but then just knowing that there is help out there, because I think for me too with Morgan, I don't know how anybody else felt, but I felt like Morgan was one of a kind. I felt like even when there was 1,000 programs out there and different activities that everybody said, oh, this would be great for her, or this was great for my child, or this was great for my individual. As soon as I took Morgan in, she was the only one that did not work out.
Right.
I
Right.
was like, good Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, there's nothing, right?
There was, I felt like she was one of a kind. I felt
Yeah.
like no
She is one of a kind
medication.
for sure. For sure.
Yes,
But
nothing would work for her, even if it worked for 1,000 other people. And it
yeah.
was so many times when I was hopeful and I went to these places and I was so excited, like, oh my gosh, this person said their child was worse off than Morgan and they did it. And when I went there and it didn't work, I would go home crying
So
because I felt like
defeating.
that was my hope.
Yeah.
That was, and then,
Yeah.
or they said, we wish we could do it, but see, since she can't sit for 5 minutes, then we can't take it. If she could have sat for 3 minutes, it was always
Yeah.
something.
But you
Yes.
know what? They can teach that. Like, so I do feel like the right program will
Mhm.
look at your child's strengths and challenges and then really be able to factor those things in and customize the program for them, right? Like, not doesn't mean create a whole new thing, but if it's the right program of itself, in it of itself, with the right principles of teaching and understanding the individual, they're able to adapt it to help that, you know, each person in the way that they need. That's what, just like an IEP does, an ISP, the individual support plan, that's what that does. That's the adult version of an IEP, basically, and that's supposed to help really customize it to that person, you know, to your loved one. You said something about what did you say that made me want to comment? Oh, I'll think of
I
it.
was throwing everything at you, Amy. But I just,
Menopause, no, menopause brain.
but I did think again when I was listening to Devereux, and I just, again, it gave me hope because again, along the way, Morgan is 21, and along the way, where doors have been shut in my face, or people have been telling me, okay, this is not something that will work for her. I really felt hopeful that wow, this could potentially be an option for her at some point. And again, I'm not saying I'm going anywhere. It's
No,
just to
it's
know
no.
that something is out there that
Now
she
you
would not be
reminded me.
excluded from.
So
Yeah.
hope is also like so critical.
Yes.
Asking for help and then having hope, right? And I feel like it's Devereux's job as a provider. All of our staff should be able to give our families hope because we see their individuals day in and day out. And we need to teach sometimes our families how to recognize the strengths because we live in such a deficit-based model of talking about all the stuff that kid can't do or that adult can't do. And then you end up feeling like, what can they do, right? So we need staff and aides that can point out all the great things so that the parents start to see it or the siblings start to see it. But the other thing is, like, let us not, you know, I heard you say you didn't want to have the conversation, but the day Annie got diagnosed, so the day before she turned 2, every single day, there's not one day that has not passed that I haven't thought about what happens when I die. And that's the bottom line, is I cannot bear to think about dying without knowing that I'm going to have her set up in a place where she's safe, she's happy, she's appreciated for the person she is, and she has a quality of life, whatever that means. It doesn't mean working 40 hours a week, right? It means whatever it looks like for Annie. And so that's sort of been my goal for her, and also for all the families that I am fortunate to serve. I want families to not be afraid to talk about these things and to be open to thinking about this. That's why I want to move Annie out of my home before I'm at a point where, I'm in the emergency room or something where I'm really, don't have choices, right? I want her to see she can live in her home happily. I can live in my home. She can come visit. I can come visit. And everything is still great. And she's still happy and mom's still happy, right? Like, I think in order for me to die peacefully, I'm going to need to see that happen, And so I think having those conversations is so critical, and they are hard to bring up, and they're really hard to have to think about so early. I was just talking with some of our families about this same thing, and there's no fair in life, right? But it really feels stinky that we have to do these things so far in advance. But we're on our game. Like, this is stuff that some people never will get around to even thinking about.
And I agree. And I do think that, I know we have our special needs individuals, but that should be something that we talk about on a daily basis, even with our neurotypical kids. I mean, most people, there's a lot of, and I remember my brother-in-law told me this years ago, when one day I lived every day when Morgan was growing up and she started having seizures. I almost lived every day as if today was her last day. And it was scary. It was scary and it was depressing. And then one day he told me, he said, well, you're looking at it like Morgan could pass away today. He said, do you know any of our kids could pass away? And I was like, I never thought about it like that. Because from what you're saying, it's like every time I went to the doctor, they stripped me of hope. So that hope just kind of, it deteriorated each day, and it got worse as she got diagnosed with more. But I think for me, again, at some point, you want to be in a happy place of having that special needs individual. And I will say this, I will be honest and say that all these years, I finally found that place. I finally found a place where
that's called acceptance.
That's
what it is. And I've had so many parents say, how do you get there? Tell me what you have to do. And it's just time, and it's processing, and it's being real, and it's talking to other other families who live a similar life. I think our best resource is other families, hands down, more than any doctor or anything. I think families can support families in a way like no other.
I totally agree. And I think that when you get to that place, it's a wonderful place to be. And I think for me, again, just knowing that Morgan is a special package that was hand delivered to me and entrusted to me, but I had to really get to that place. It wasn't overnight. And I think you all talked about this on the when we talked in February, when I listened to your conference. I don't know.
Family Resilience Conference.
Yes, I think the main thing is going through your different phases without someone rushing you through it. You gotta go through those phases of where you do grieve it. You grieve the daughter.
And then I was angry. I was so angry too.
You go through those things, but I think over the years, most people have been afraid to admit these things. I didn't order Morgan. I ordered a girl that I could go get my nails done with.
That's exactly right. Yeah, what has Morgan given you that you wouldn't have expected, right? So many things. And same. Annie is, I always say, like, she's like Christmas morning every day. Sometimes you're just going to get socks. So it's kind of a day, right? But some days you're going to get coal, which means bad day. And some days you're going to get diamond earrings, and they're not all the time, but they're still diamond earrings. They're awesome days where she does something fantastic, right? And so I feel like, you're right. I think we have to get to the point where we can enjoy our own child for who they are, and give up, sort of mourn the dream of that child, right? Who they aren't. And I wouldn't take anything away from Annie as it is. I would want her life to be easier, maybe in that, communicating and I would want her to be able to, like, defend herself. That's the other thing I worry about, because our kids who can't talk or, are have intellectual disabilities are much more at risk for being abused. And so I would want those things to be taken away. But otherwise, Annie is just perfectly Annie in the way that she is. And her brothers are perfect too. I mean, God knew what he was doing when he put my family together. It's very clear. But it takes a while to be able to get there, and that's okay.
I have to say, this is the first time that I can actually say this, even though I'm on the other end of it.
Yeah.
But my mom, like I said, taking care of my mom, she was a vibrant, because my father was killed when I was 7.
Oh,
so she raised us. She was an independent, strong, powerful. Then, like I said, she had the brain aneurysm, and she needed 24-hour care. But this is the actual first time I could sit here and listen to what y'all saying, and I've been thinking the same thing that you guys were thinking. What happens if me and my brother and sister get in an accident? Who would take care of her? Yeah. It's things like that, even though she's my mom and y'all had kids, but it's the same thinking and same feeling.
It is.
You just, wow. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, but that's a great
it's a great point.
Yeah. Right. And I think a great light bulb moment, right? Where
people don't realize, yes, that's my mom, and she's older, but still she had the aneurysm.
Your mom,
not because she's and the aneurysm is not because she's older, it just happened.
Right.
But our parents revert back to being our children.
Yes.
In a sense. It becomes your parent. You're taking care, you're nursing your mom.
And
you flip
and I would look at her, and even though that's the figure of her, but that's not her.
Right.
What she was before.
Sure.
And she would do little certain things that bring that spark out. Because really, she went back to the age of 19.
Wow.
Really, So again, you get the accepting after a while,
Yeah. You went through all the stages too.
Sure. Right. The first time I'm actually can be able to share that was, even though you, like I said, it's your children, but it's the same experience somewhat.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think we can talk about it because we're coming from our kids' standpoint. Right. But you're absolutely right, Madeline. You went through those stages and you cared for your mom as if she was your child. And again, as they get older, we reverse those roles and we become their caregivers, and we're giving them the love. We're just, like we said, we just throwing up the timber. We're actually reversing those roles and giving them what they've given us for years.
And wouldn't we all do that for our parents? I mean, your mom is your mom, right? That's like my mom I hold in such high regard. She's the one that saved me getting through all this with Annie. She was there every day for so long. I can't even tell you. And she didn't live with us. She should have. But I could have used it. But yeah, it's really, it's something.
This has been an awesome conversation. Yes. I feel like honestly, Amy, I feel like at this point, I wish that we had known each other when Morgan was younger, because there were times that I just needed to talk to someone that understood where I was coming from, someone that I could admit some of the things that I felt was so embarrassing to admit. You wanted to admit these things. I felt like if I could get it out and talk about it, I would have felt so much better about, where I was at that point. But I think you're right. If I would advise any parent from my stance right now, with Morgan being 21, I would advise you to get with someone that could help you, that you could talk freely to without feeling embarrassed or without being kind of put down about it. But I would honestly say get with someone that you can conversate with freely, and that you would just pour out your heart to, because that is needed. It's definitely needed. And I think, Amy, I wish I would have known you years ago.
I wish I would have known you too. I know. But now we do.
But we do know each other now.
We've got a whole life ahead of us.
We do. And I definitely appreciate, I want to have you back, because I know we did touch on your daughter a little bit, but I would definitely want to have you back to tell us more about your daughter, which we had already planned to do anyway. But I just enjoyed this conversation. Madeline, thank you for sharing your story.
Madeline, thank you.
Again, everybody. That's my closing remarks. I'm gonna give you guys a chance to do your closing remarks. And I appreciate it.
Thanks, LaShawn.
Yes, I thank you so much, Amy, and the reassurance of the Devereux group home gives like you said, hope. A way for parents to think, okay, well, this may be a place for my children or child or children to go, just in case something happens to them, or even help them in the future as I get older, like your daughters.
That's right. The worst
calls. Y'all come to Maryland.
Yeah, I know we might. Maybe we will. But let me just tell you, the worst calls that I get are from the parent who has passed away in their 80s and and the 60-year-old or 65-year-old son or daughter who's profoundly autistic is left for the first time by themselves without a parent and never lived outside that home. And that is talk about such a difficult transition, right? So we don't want that to happen. So let's be proactive, right? And we'll come talk about Annie and lots of tips for we can have some autism families or intellectual disability families come in and we could do a question and answer. I think there's so much sharing with families though. We're the people you got to talk to, right? I think
that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. Empowering and encouraging and uplifting. We want people, and I think we talked about this before we went on, not feeling alone. Feeling alone is a terrible place to be. Sure so I think that if we see other families out there that's making it, we just want to, not just from autism, but just from any disability, we want people to know that you can still make it. It's okay. You know, it may not be what you envisioned it to be, but it's still okay.
Paula, you and I were single moms. I was a single mom for 10 years. You were a single mom for 14. We found miraculous, wonderful men who love our children too, right?
It's possible.
It is possible. It is. And I mean, Annie loves her stepdad so much.
That's Morgan too, honey.
Yeah, it's amazing. He traveled tonight and she was crying. Miss Matt. I know. I get
let me send you with him.
Exactly. That's right.
But yes, guys, thank you guys so much. Oh my gosh, this was so great. I've been looking forward to this all week. And thank you guys so much. Yes. I look forward to Amy to us talking again and you coming back on the show. And let's collaborate. Let's get some more parents in here. I want to show
it. Let's do it. Get them to sign up. Let's not wait too long. I'm happy to come back in a couple weeks or whenever you guys have time. I know your schedule is busy, but I will stay up from 8 to 9 again for you.
Yeah. Now go get your rest.
That's right.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye.